Hey people of the personal unplugged variety, Paul here, longer podcast, 2 parts, all about beating imposter syndrome. And he's not beating it, he's actually just changing it. Changing your behaviours, changing your emotions so you can be a success in any environment, in any group of people, in any context. Big enough for you? Yeah. Have a listen.
Warning.
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 Warning. You are entering into the unplugged mind of Paul Cloughie. Too late. Personal Development Unplugged.
Hey y'all, how you doing? Paul Cloughie, Personal Development Unplugged. Here we are again. Anxiety. What about anxiety, Cloughie? Well, anxiety is probably 90% of the basis or the cause or the effect of all the clients I see. All has a foundation of anxiety. And one of the biggest ones is, I guess, this thing we call imposter syndrome. And I had to look it up. I had to look it up on Google to try to find the definition first. And it's just very simple. The fear of being exposed. Okay, which makes sense, doesn't it? Imposter syndrome. Get it right, Paul. Imposter syndrome. Say it properly. The fear of being exposed. And that fear will create that anxiety. And that anxiety, well, I'm going to guess. Well, I know. It starts off in one little bit of your life and then will spread gently, easily, because it's your unconscious mind, I guess, trying to do things for you. But we'll get into that shortly. But then what I did was I Googled how to beat imposter syndrome. And that's when I got really dismayed. I really did. Because the very first thing that Google told us was, well, reprogram how you feel about yourself. Well, whoopee-doo to you. Oh, that's ever so easy. Just reprogram yourself. You know, when you're feeling anxious and you're feeling an imposter, just reprogram the way you feel about yourself. That doesn't work. Well, it does work if you know how. And that's the problem. None of these bloody things tell you how to do things. And I'm going to do that, by the way. The next one is, and it was second on the list, that's why it's the next one, know you're not alone. Well, whoopee bloody do. I don't care whether I'm alone if I've got imposter syndrome because I'm worried about me. I'm not worried about everyone. If you want me to worry about everyone else as well, okay, it's, we can become a flock of people with imposter syndromes. We can be worried about everyone. But if we're in that flock, are we an imposter in that flock? That's crazy, isn't it? No, you're not alone. Be like on the telly, okay, and no, it's not your fault. Of course, it's not your fault, but you do decide this, by the way. But we'll get into that. The next one got better. I must admit the next one did get better in my eyes only. Own your achievements. And I thought, that's getting better. Didn't tell you how to own them, though. And this is the whole point of most of this stuff you get. You get told what to do, but not how to do it. And we're going to go into the owning your achievements because I think it's a real great place to start, but not just yet. Know the value you provide. That's pretty good too, if you believe in yourself. But we're going to go there too. So we've got 2 out of 4 at the moment. The next one is talk to someone. What? Doesn't tell you who. Doesn't tell you to talk about what. Is it talking to, the janitor, the librarian, the person in the paper shop, the cigarette shop, or, your local convenience store? Who? Who do you talk to? Now, obviously, I would say talk to a therapist. Talk to someone, maybe a life coach, but yeah, I think a therapist with hypnosis, NLP, timeline therapy. Yeah, Paul, you do that, don't you? Yes, I do. And that's why I think we really get some good results, especially around imposter syndrome. But the thing is, talk to someone is a good idea. But who to talk to? And we might go into that, but talking is great if it resolves a problem. But the thing is, you've been talking to yourself, that's someone, for a long time about this. And did it get any better? No. Why didn't it get any better? Because you didn't create this consciously. That's the problem. Well, it's not the problem. It's the answer. It's a part of the solution. You see, if you didn't create this issue consciously, how the hell are you going to solve it consciously? Must have been created somewhere else, wasn't it? I'll say that clearer. It must have been created somewhere else, didn't it? Yeah, in your unconscious mind. That's where you created this behavior. We're going to go into that bit in a minute. And then the last one I thought, which was absolutely gold. It was gold. Number 6 of the 6 things to do to beat imposter syndrome was stop comparing to others. I just said, well, yeah. Just stop it. And I don't know if you've seen the YouTube clip from Bob Newhart, the therapist, and it's just called Stop It. Listen to that. Have a listen to that. It's an awesome skit. But, just stop comparing yourself to others. Okay, I'll do that. Mission done. Although it's still there. You see, in this how to beat imposter syndrome, those 6 steps, those six things you could do, it starts off with the word how, and it didn't give you one how in any of that. And that's what really pisses me off. Sorry about swearing, but it does. And that's what Personal Development Unplugged is all about. It's finding some simple ways. In simplicity, there's genius. Old Albert Einstein, we're there with that. If we can find some simple steps, that the return on the investment is massive for the effort you put in, but making sure that the results are what you want, that's where we go. So that's what we're going to break down in this podcast. And I've got a feeling it's going to be more of a 2-part podcast because one, I want to get some foundations of your thoughts around your imposter syndrome. And then on the second one, we start to look at it even more deeply to get those real how-tos. But sometimes we have to dive a little deeper to understand what's going on. Because at the moment, your imposter syndrome is not the problem. Oh, for Christ's sake, Cloughie, what's that about? Of course it's the problem. No, it's an effect. That was my big meta box on my notes today. It's an effect. Something is creating this imposter syndrome, this anxiety that you have around people or in the workplace or wherever you feel that fear of being exposed. We have to deal with the cause, because if you just deal with the effect, well, you're going to deal with some of the effect, and that the rest of the remainder of the effect will stay there, and just you have to deal with that, and then something else comes along and something else comes along. If you don't deal with the cause, the root cause, the old metaphor is, and it's been hammered to death, is if you've got a weed and you keep plucking the leaves, guess what happens? It tends to get bigger, bushier, stronger, with more and more leaves, more and more effects. Take out the root, the taproot, the root cause. Those leaves, those effects have to disappear. They have to wither and die and they don't come back. That's the whole point. They do not come back, because if there is no root cause, they cannot come back. But it's how I think you look at this to start off with. You see, starting from the very beginning, once we acknowledge this is only an effect, the effect of from a cause that's creating this, and this effect is purely a behavior. It's a behavior that you don't like. It's a behavior, it feels like that, but feeling is a behavior because that's what you do. So sometimes you can react in a way, you can feel emotional in a particular way that you don't like, which gives you this fear of being exposed, this imposter syndrome. We've got a label for it. But it's just a behavior. And the good thing about behaviors, what's that, Paul? They can be changed in an instant. Just like that. Now that's the awesome thing about this. Once we start looking at this, once we start diving deeper into this subject, knowing that it's only a behavior and a behavior can be changed, we've now got clarity. Clarity in saying, well, if this is just a behavior, I will change it. But first of all, I've got to discover the cause. And when I discover the cause, then I can do something about it. And that is perfect. That's the perfect way to go. Because I want to take away all this BS about reprogram yourself. No, you're not alone. Don't know why I did the voice. But I want you to start to change. And I want you to start to change now. I'm going to help you with it. Because, do you know what? One of my real aims for this particular podcast and the part 2 of it is to get you to feel both comfortable and empowered. Because when you're really comfortable in you, you don't care where you are or where you do care, but you're not worried. That's maybe a better way. You're not anxious about who you're with, where you are, because you're comfortable in yourself. And when you're comfortable in yourself, you can be empowered to do anything, which means then you can do anything. Well, do anything, or you can learn to do anything. That's a better way. You can get those skills because now you're comfortable and empowered in yourself, which means then we get to carry out our dreams. We actually go for our dreams. We know that the things that this particular effect, this fear of being exposed, has been teaching us something. There's learnings to be had here, and we're going to find those shortly, because then there's no such thing as failure. They're just learnings, which means then there's nothing to be afraid of, is there? Because everything that happens, there's no failure, just feedback. We're going to learn from it and grow stronger, more empowered. And then it doesn't matter what anybody thinks about us, even if they did, because at the moment you're imagining what people are thinking. And do you know what? When you imagine things inside seem to be real. There's that thing, fear. I can't remember what it's called now, but it's something appearing real. False evidence appearing real. That's right. Well, yeah, it's a lovely little ditty. But the thing is, your unconscious mind cannot tell the difference between what is reality and what's imagined when you go into real imagination. Because when you think about it, when you imagine this thing, we can talk about the imposter syndrome, going out into the workplace and feeling exposed. And when you imagine that and you talk to yourself that, your heart rate starts to go. You feel really tense. You feel that nervousness, that anxiety, all because of something you imagined. So that's why your unconscious mind cannot tell the difference between reality and what's imagined, because you're not even bloody there. And the thing is, you've got a wonderful skill. What's that, Cloughie? Well, the wonderful skill is being able to imagine and making things appear real. You see, if you've got that wonderful skill, and you obviously have, because you can do this stuff, in your head, without thinking. Well, actually, you do it without thinking, don't you? Because if you thought about it, you'd stop. Oh, that was number 6, wasn't it? Just stop it. But the thing is, if you've got that wonderful skill, all we have to do is learn to use it in a different way. And when you learn it in a different way, and then that reality in your mind becomes a reality outside, the way you want it to be. But first of all, we've got to get there. This is where the how-tos are going to come in. But the first thing is, just think about this. If, and I say if, but I know it's real, the truth. If this is an effect that has a cause, and it's just behaviours. Now, the NLP presupposition, every behaviour has a positive intention. And I believe your unconscious mind does everything with a positive intention. But everything is behaviours, isn't it? That's what I think. Everything is just a behaviour. We can change a behaviour. Yeah, there's a few beliefs that float in and out to support those behaviours, but we're going to look at that in a minute. But just think, what could the positive intention be to having these fears? Fears of being exposed, fears of being an imposter. Because I know you feel that fear, but if you didn't feel that fear for the moment, just think about it. What could the positive intention of this be? Well, if you think about it, if it was a best friend trying to get you to think of something in a way, it might try to keep you on top of your game. Because if you feel you're going to be exposed by something, you'd have to be on top of your game to make sure you didn't get exposed, wouldn't it? Now, that's a good thing. If your best friend was really helping you just to be on top of your game, that would be awesome in its own right. In and of itself. I love that little sentence. In and of itself. The thing is, keeping you on top of your game, you can do that without anxiety. Anxiety doesn't help you do it. It just brings overwhelm. But that's the effect. But the intention is keeping you top of your game. Also, well, if you're on top of your game, what would that result in? Being a success. awesome. You want that, don't you? You want to be a success and you want to be on top of your game. You want to be the best. Because if you didn't, we all want to be our best secretly, even if we don't admit it to people outside. You have to admit it to yourself, don't you? I really want to be the best. Sometimes it does pee you off because you can't quite get there, but that's because we haven't learnt yet. So, keep you at the top of your game to be a success. Well, think of the reverse of that. It's also not to be a failure. So the positive intention is, I know this is like a not, which is a bit weird, and it's a negative, but not to be a failure because failing hurts. And that hurt can create anxiety. The thing is, when you've got this anxiety about being exposed, then you're already feeling that anxiety of what it feels like to fail. And in fact, you probably feel like a failure because you feel like you're exposed. You feel like you're an imposter. And if you're an imposter in this world, yeah, that hurts. So hang on a minute, we're talking about conflicts now, Cloughie. Yeah, we're going to get there. So we've got this positive intention of not to fail because it hurts. Also, it keeps you from feeling that disappointment of, because if you don't actually get there, if it keeps you out of it a little bit, because if you don't do everything perfectly, then you won't do it at all. Therefore, if you don't do it, you're not going to fail. Instead of hurt, you get disappointment. Another reason why you should really be on top of your game, really when you should try to be your best. And unfortunately, the overwhelm that comes because it's based on anxiety. And there's also another thing. We were talking about the beliefs. There'll be a negative belief there. You already think, I'm an imposter. That's a negative belief. Well, if you think you're an imposter, then you're going to have to up your game, aren't you? If you want to be a success and you don't want to fail and you don't want that hurt and disappointment, if you've got a negative belief that says I'm an imposter, it's in some way trying to empower you to do more. The thing is, this is where all these conflicts come in. The conflict between the positive intention and the actual behaviors you're producing. Because that negative belief of I'm an imposter actually becomes so negative it stops you doing anything and actually makes you feel an imposter. Well, actually, that's the whole point of this thing, is not to feel an imposter, because it wants to make you on top of your game and to be a success. And how can you do that when you believe you're an imposter? Because it's overwhelming, isn't it? So you've got the first major conflict between the positive intention of keeping on top of your game and being a success, and then making you feel like an imposter. The whole thing it's trying not to do. So your unconscious mind is trying to do something for you. So we've got to identify the conflict. Now, I'm sure there's more to it. Whatever I say, I know there's more. I don't have all the answers. I have some answers. And when we go through the actual hows and the how-tos, rather, they will not be the only things cast in stone, because I want you to be able to adapt them to you, to your own personality. And that's the thing. But anyway, once we start to identify the conflict, we ask ourselves the question. You see, even though I'm going to rewind something, if you knew that you were always on top of your game and success was always within your grasp, and you knew you were never going to fail, you were just going to keep learning, and you knew there'd be no disappointment, could you be an imposter? Well, think about it. I know the answer, and the answer is absolutely bloody not. So if you had that intention without that limiting belief of I feel like an imposter, without that anxiety, that negative feeling, wherever you feel that anxiety, that fear, if you didn't have that feeling and you didn't have that limiting belief of I'm an imposter, I'm not good enough, probably is in there too, then keeping that positive intention of keeping you on top of your game and being a success, where there is no failure, there is only feedback, and there is no disappointment, it would be an awesome place to be, because you wouldn't be an imposter, because no one is, by the way. But the thing is, saying that, telling you that, now maybe you can believe it, because you don't know how to change it, but you can now see, yes, I want to keep on top of my game. Yes, I want to be a success. Yes, I want that there's no failure, there's only feedback. And yes, I don't want any disappointment. I want to just feel okay. I want to feel that inner strength. I want to feel what Cloughie said, empowered and comfortable. Then we're saying to your unconscious mind, I really want that intention. But recognize the conflict, because what you're doing for me by having me feel that fear, having that limiting belief, is in direct conflict in getting those results. What would it be like if you changed the behavior so I got those results? Well, when you think about it, that's a no-brainer, isn't it? We just have to educate your unconscious mind. So I know some time ago, and I don't know how long ago, it could have been last week, probably not, probably way back in your history, that something happened and your unconscious mind went, whoa, let's do this, give you a little bit of anxiety, give you this little bit of limiting belief, because, that spurred you on to do something really good. So now keep doing the same thing. And that's what happens sometimes. Well, most of the time I notice that your unconscious mind does the same thing over and over again, but gets it stronger, bigger. I don't know if you notice, and if you could, just think back over time. The anxiety you feel now about being an imposter, notice how big it is right now. I don't want you to feel it, but just notice, out of 10, how big it's got. And then go back a year and notice, it wasn't quite that big before. And then go back 2 years before that. That was a bit smaller. And then go way back to the first time you ever felt it. It was a tiny little thing, because it's like a snowball. Your unconscious mind keeps doing the same thing over and over again. But because you're now doing different things, you're going about your business, you're going to learn, you're going to have a career, you want success, you have dreams, you have goals. Your unconscious mind goes, I just want to make sure that you're on top of your game. I want you to be a success at this, because I don't want you to fail. I don't really feel disappointed. So I'll keep doing this thing more and more and more. And becomes overwhelmed and has a complete conflict in itself. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to get your unconscious mind to realize there's a conflict and that you want that positive intention, but let's get it a better way. Because is there a better way? Absolutely. Because you think about it. When I said, if I was feeling empowered, or if you were feeling empowered and comfortable, would that be better than feeling anxiety? It's a no-brainer, isn't it? Think of, and we will do it in the how-to, think of a few different ways you would like to feel instead of that anxiety. So if you could imagine now that imposter syndrome just disappearing from your life, how would you feel differently? How do you feel differently right now? Well, maybe you'd feel not just empowered, you'll feel confident. Not overconfident, but confident. Maybe you would feel competent, because that goes hand in hand, doesn't it? Competence and confidence. When you're confident and competent in your own ability, that means you become comfortable in yourself. You're empowered. You have that inner strength. Maybe you have that feeling of rapport, communication, connection. Because when you're connecting with others, there is no imposter syndrome, is there? Because you are now with other people. Yeah, some people have more skills than you. And we talked about this before, about finding your competition. Find those people who are doing what you want to do and doing it better than you, so you can learn from them. So now you're looking at people and going, you're brilliant. I want to learn from you. Oh, you're not quite doing as what I'm doing, and I can teach you too. And then we start sharing. That makes you feel even more empowered. And the more you teach, the more better you feel about the subject, because you now know it. You're learning again. So this is going round in circles, Paul. Not really. Setting the foundation of this just behaviour of imposter syndrome. So now we've got an understanding, I hope, of intentions and that conflict. So we will look at different behaviours. And the different behaviours will be the way you behave, obviously, but also the way you feel, because at the moment, that to me is a behaviour, and it'll be the type of beliefs you'll have about yourself that will be different, that will support you and support your unconscious mind of keeping you with that positive intention, of keeping you at the top, keeping you safe, keeping you a success from failure, from hurt, from disappointment. Now, a little while ago, on my little round the circle talk, we had number 3, own And this is go back. No, you're not alone. Well, you're not alone. No one's alone. Just, we're going to be okay. We're going to be with other people. We're going to connect anyway. So we're going to go through that. But own your achievements. And remember I said that's getting better, but know how to. I want you to own your achievements, because I think that's part of showing your unconscious mind what you've already done. And part of that is not just, I don't know how you own them. This is how I own my achievements. I acknowledge them. So I don't let anybody else tell me what they are. I acknowledge them to myself, because I was there when I did them. I know the times when I was empowered, comfortable, successful, top of my game, when I was just knocking it out the park. All those times. All the things I've worked really hard for and succeeded at. Yeah, there was a few, in brackets, my floating brackets or quotation marks, there was some failures along the way, but I learnt from those results and I carried on. So what we need to do is acknowledge, bring them to the forefront of our mind. Which mind? Our unconscious mind. How do you do that? Oh, well, you just think about them, Paul, don't you? No. What we do is we write them down. We know that. If it's important, as Joe Rogan said, write that shit down. He does swear a lot, by the way. But he is such a brilliant mind. And if it's important, write it down. So get a journal. Get a piece of paper. Get an envelope. I don't care. Journals are lovely. I love my journals. You can always come back to them. You can caress them. You can open them up. You go back through your life and see all the wonderful things you've done. Because even that is acknowledging of achievement. I had an issue. I looked at my journal. There was an issue there, but I resolved it. I solved it. Awesome. That's me being a success at that particular thing. So what we're going to do, we're going to write them down. And you can just put, these are, do a mind map. I do mind maps, things in the middle. These are my achievements. And then you draw a line away from that circle in the middle of these are my achievements. And on each line, you write an achievement. Now, what could they be? What could achievements be? Well, intellectually, I guess they could be qualifications. So you write down your qualifications. But as you look at each one, notice and think back what you had to do to achieve those qualifications. Because I'm going to guess they weren't all a walk in the park. You had to put effort into it. You had to do things. You had to put your own inner strength into them. You had to learn. You had to put effort into them. But you did it. What other things can be like qualifications? Maybe they're just things you've done, your successes. But look at them in different contexts, because I'm not just interested if you've got imposter syndrome at work of just looking at successes at work. I want to see successes in different contexts of your life, because this is all about you noticing your own inner strength, your own achievements in this world. You were put on this little planet Earth of ours, I believe, to do something great. And that greatness is yours. So what successes have you had already? And if you really want to go back to things, you can say, well, when I was a youngster, I read a book. I can read. I can write. I can draw. What are the things you love doing? Because the things that you love doing, probably you don't think of them as being a success, because they come naturally to you. Oh, well, it's so easy. How can that be a success? But if you're good at it, or you enjoy doing it and you know the standard you're at, that's a success. Because it may not be that you are the most gifted artist or whatever. I don't know why I said artist, but if you enjoy doing it and you like doing it, that is, to me, a success, because you're doing it to a level that you've achieved already, and that level will be better than when you first started. So what are your successes? Maybe you've had successes in meeting people. Maybe you've had successes in helping people, doing things, creating things. Doesn't matter how small that you think other people might think them. They're irrelevant. The people, that is, not the things you're doing. And fill up the whole bloody page of all your successes. And when you do that, this is something then you can start to look at and feel what it felt like. Go back in your mind to each one of those subjects, those lines where you've been a success. If you're married, you chose somebody, they chose you. You were a success in their eyes because they love you. So who loves you? You've been a success in their eyes. And if you really want to go into that, and some of the things you can go, I've just come to mind. I did a hypnosis track called My Autobiography. And it's really about looking through the eyes of love. Okay, that might be a little bit squishy-squashy for you, but try it. You get to go to your real core essence of who you really are. So just go to paulcloughonline.com/podcast, sign up, and then just search down to My Autobiography. I don't know the number right now, so I just thought about it, but it's there. There's loads of other stuff there. You've got to join that. You've got to. But anyway, we're talking about your successes. I want you to then, on that piece of paper, and you can have more than one piece of paper, Paul? Of course you can. Because I know you've got more successes than you know. And what I love to do, and this is a thing, and we've done it before, and we've had our old mate Josh Waitskin tell us, you ask the question and then leave it for a little while and then come back. So what will the question be? Well, I wonder, unconscious mind, what are my successes? The things I've succeeded in and made me feel good, made me feel empowered, and making me feel comfortable and confident, whatever you want to feel. And then leave that piece of paper, leave that thought to go deep inside your neurology, to your unconscious mind, to that place where your unconscious mind can then go, that's a damn good question, you know. Let's have a think. So while you're off doing all your other stuff, your unconscious mind is then going through all the memories, all the things you think you've forgotten. And then when you come back and you go, oh yeah, my successes, what were they? And it's like your pen starts writing, because it will. One of my few guarantees I give to clients is when you start doing this type of work and you let your unconscious mind give it time to think of these things, answers come without you having to think. It's awesome. And you see, the other thing about this is when you do it that way, the unconscious mind, your unconscious mind, is doing the work, and it is convincing itself, as it were, that you're a success. And when it realizes the success you are, it will even get even deeper into that conflict, thinking, why have I got this limiting belief of I'm an imposter? Because I've just gone through all my successes. Yeah, these are examples of being on top of my game, being a success. And if you've got these examples of when you've been on top of your game, being a success, and all your achievements, then it just has to loosen that model so much that it cannot be there. That foundation has got to start cracking, start disappearing of the fear of being exposed, that imposter syndrome. And you see, an imposter couldn't write those successes down because they wouldn't have any. And I know you have. You've got millions, maybe too many to put on the paper, but you could do that. So here's the thing. Do that over 2 or 3 days, or you can do it in a day, but just leave it for 10 minutes and then come back. Each time, just leaving it for 10 minutes, then come back. And when you finish, go back through each one that you've written down. Go back through your own mind and your memory of those achievements. Feel them again. Feel how empowered it makes you. Makes you feel how comfortable, how competent, confident, or what. Just notice what it feels like to go back to that times when you were a success. And when you have that total feeling, you could anchor it by squeezing a finger or thumb or pushing a knuckle or things like that. When you have that real feeling of success, I then want you to start the second part of this exercise, which is now thinking, where do you want to go? What do you want? What are your dreams? And the first thing you'll probably say is, well, I want to be a success again. I don't know why the again, because it's there. But success would be too big a generality. We want to get into the wonderful word I love is specificity. Let's hone this down into different areas of your life, different contexts, and start to just notice, just in headings at the moment, the headings of those goals, where you want to be, what you want to do. We're not going to do the hows. We're not going to do times. We're not going to do anything about them at the moment. That's going to come in part 2. But I want you to make sure that you just have a list of goals. Okay, you can have a list of goals and that list could be three areas of your, 3 different things you want to be able to achieve. That's cool. You might have 10. And if you do have 10, what we're going to have to do is then get more specific to say which ones are the most important ones to work on now. But that's for the next time. So as a recap, you might want even to listen to this again, but just to understand that your unconscious mind is trying to do something perfectly positive for you, so you can be a success, so you can be integrated, connected with like-minded people. It doesn't want you to be an imposter. It doesn't want you to feel that way. And that's because that's the conflict. That's the effect you're getting. So we're going to start to find the cause shortly, but we need to get your unconscious mind to focus down. So when we realize there's a conflict going on, and we know that we really want that intention of being on things like top of our game, being a success, no failure, any feedback, no disappointment, just satisfaction, empowerment, comfortableness. And that, above all, this is only a behavior with a limiting belief. Limiting beliefs can change in an instant. Behaviors can change in an instant. Therefore, we can change. Remember how we're going to change. First of all, we're just going to have a look at all our successes. Do them as a mind map or as a list. I love mind maps because you can see them all in one go. A list tends to make it difficult for me to read sometimes. Mind maps are brilliant for me. All your qualifications, all your successes, everything you've done, which has been, well, something you just know you've achieved, because it's a list of achievements. And this is our way of acknowledging them. Then get that feeling, going back to each one, and notice how when you remember it in vivid detail, because you're bloody good at that, as vivid as you can, feel that feeling. And when you have that feeling, you can either anchor it. Remember that you've got my autobiography if you want to get a bit more deep into the emotions, and then start to get another piece of paper, another page in your journal, and start to write down where you want to go. What are your goals in mind? I'll help you to make them more specific, but if you get some generalities, then just try to bring it down into more specifics. And no valuing them. No, well, I don't know how I'm going to get there, because I don't care about the how-tos at the moment. When we get the motivation and the value of them, the why, that's when the hows come. But we're not there yet, because we've also got to clear other stuff out. Because when we've cleared that limiting belief out, and we start to notice the new ways, things will change. Okay, this is, I guess, part 1. Well, no, it's part 1. Didn't guess. Part 2 will be coming along shortly. But first of all, do this work. Because without it, part 2 is a bit of a waste of time for me. And I know that you want to beat this blooming effect, this fear of being exposed. You want to change this behavior. Just think, just for the moment, here's the thing. This is something I want to leave you to, or leave you with, because you might be thinking, it's all very well, Cloughie, you've done a lot of bloody talking, and I'm not quite sure about this. Well, here's the thing. Imagine this, just for a moment. Imagine going to sleep tonight, and overnight, a miracle happens. All the work you've done suddenly creates the way you want to be. All that fear of being exposed, that imposter syndrome, that anxiety disappears overnight. Everything disappears. And as you wake up in the morning, knowing that you're empowered and you can do anything you want, how will that make you feel? How will you feel? And when you have that feeling, and knowing exactly what it would be like, how light would you feel? A lot of my clients say, I'd feel so light. I'd feel a burst of energy. I'd feel like, I'm just going to do this. I know it's okay. And when you get that, then start to write down that mind map of all your achievements. Acknowledge them. And then when you have all of that feeling, get onto your goals. That's how we do it. So imagine that miracle happening overnight. There you go. So, I don't know why I said so. I will speak to you very soon with a lot more how-tos, but let's get those foundations going. Let's loosen that model of the world of this imposter syndrome. I do hope you enjoyed this. I hope I've made sense, because I've obviously had notes, but I've rattled on. But I think I have. I feel comfortable that I've done it okay. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Yeah. So off your toddle. I'm going to do probably the same thing, but maybe a different way for me. And if you do feel that you could change this to make it even better for yourself, do it. No problem. This is all about me sharing with you some thoughts of mine and you taking them to make them yours. So you own them. Because you're not alone. You're always with yourself. That's a given. And you're with us at Personal Development Unplugged. Okay. Enjoy every heartbeat, and I'll be with you real soon for part 2 of Imposter Syndrome, No Way. Hey, I know what you're thinking. I've heard this before, but you haven't heard this one. So, anyway, I know you've only got so much time in the world. Time is precious. And you've only got so much time to share good things with your friends. So maybe the next time you consider sharing something, you can consider sharing this podcast or a podcast of mine, of Personal Development Unplugged, that you enjoyed, and share it with, I'd like you to share it with everyone. You know, the pay it forward. And if you pay it forward and then you ask somebody else to pay it forward, you know, we'll be really creating this community of the Personal Development Unplugged kind. So I'd love you to do that, if you could. If you would like to subscribe to this podcast, you can do it through iTunes, you can do it through Castbox. You can do that. And if you would love to leave a little review, 5 stars is always good, but the words are really more important. If you do that, takes about, I know people say, oh, it takes seconds, but it doesn't. It takes probably a couple of minutes. If you could do that right now, hey, that would be good. And lastly, all this hypnosis that I do is completely free. You have to go to another website though. Keeps it all nice and clean for you. It's also downloadable, which is the bit I like. I want to give it to you, and so you can put it on any device that you want, and you can listen to it anywhere you want. You don't need to have your Wi-Fi, your internet on. So that's at paulcloughonline.com/podcast. You do have to put an email address in because I have to send you the link to get it. But I just want to tell you now, for all this data protection stuff and everything that's going on at the moment, I do not share your emails with anyone. No one. Nada. They're just to let me send you the link and send you a few updates of the new hypnosis tracks. And what I'm hoping to do as this community, because that's how you get to become like the official member of the Unplugged Personal Development community, is to send some more personal hypnosis tracks that won't be available or talked about on the podcast. There'll be things of my creation which I just want to give to you. So if you'd like that, go there, paulcloughonline.com/podcast. We'll have some great times. We will. I think that's about it. So enjoy every heartbeat. And please remember, do share. It'd be great. Bye now.
Warning, you are now leaving the unplugged mind of Paul Clough. It's time to fly on your own. Be brave, my friend.
Personal Development Unplugged.